fiber of reality is coded to account for consciousness, therefore we exist. This means that there is no existence realized in the world on either side if one side is missing. So the way they interact generates a function of patterns, a possibility of potentials. So that could be quantum in typical terms. And if there's a coupling of duality, that also means that there is a single thing spreading over that, which means there is no difference, which removes all numbers. Then that itself becomes a triality. That means it's all actually one thing, which is real, instead of zero. Then that allows it to spiral upwards into an ever-expanding pattern and re-fulfill from the beginning. The dynamic multifactorial co-relativity of an agent and a receiver think about the infinite number of objects in the world, the atoms and the stars. There's an endless grid of relationship patterns there. How many thoughts do you have? Just how deep and complex does your internal world run and go? And then combine the two. It's infinity stacked on infinity in a world where nothing can only exist by the truth of nothing existing. Nothing does not exist, therefore it is nothing, it isn't realized. Anyway, when you pair or couple these two things, it's like a circle with arrows going out that can act for the agent and arrows of perceptibility coming in. These are all causally linked. This renders you a finalized agent. You are not mind, you are not body, you are both. This means that there is a duality where if you die, the world continues to exist, and if all life in the world, the universe was destroyed and it killed, there would be nothing to perceive the universe. A part of the universe would have died. The universe itself would be dead and unable to perceive itself. Does that mean the reality doesn't exist? Does that mean your body doesn't exist when either one dies? No. But they must coexist interdependently. So this creates a strange thing that I have coined supra-dual, non-dualistic ascendance. So you got supra-ascendance on either side. That means to go to a grander place. Basically, supra is above or beyond. Ascendance is to ascend or transcend. It's a suffix. That has great meaning. Non-dualism is the key thing here. That means that two things that relate to each other are one thing. They're covered under the same paradigm. But it's also non-dual in that each one has infinite configurations of itself. So that means it's unified and it's dynamically scattered and complex, separate from each other. So non-dualism is a crazy logical paradox. Perhaps not a true paradox, because it does make sense under logic, but it does break our brains, which are the source of the logic. Again, it does kind of self-resolve. Supradual means beyond dual. That would be the outside scatter plots. There is a pairing, of course. There has to be a pairing of dual and non-dual. So it's a supra dual non-dualistic. So the dual non-dualistic are hyphenated together, and it's supra, it's beyond that. So that gives it potential to expand and unfold it from itself like a flower's stigmata, I believe. That might be totally incorrect. I don't study flowers, but descendants is essentially the result of all of these things summing up to something that is greater and equal to the sum of its parts. And to complete that last post, you have to think about it as a geometry, a shape, and an algebraic, logical format, almost like the structure of a language, as math is. And then finally, it's a spiritual thing that is, of course, related to you in the world. It ends up being a lot of, like 5, like the face of a die on that side. And if it's a geometry, the multi-complex lines of causality, you could say, spiral down from an origin point that is self-generating by its end, so the time flows forward and backward. It kind of breaks logic, but it's geometry, so it meets in the middle. It splinters, turns into 2, and nothing, 0, that is still existence, because nothing is in existence. Nothing is nothing. If you think about nothing in reality here, nothing is actually real in that it is not existent. If you go to the quantum scale, there's fluctuations everywhere. There is no nothing, which makes it real. Okay? So then you have what results from that above, sort of, and all of it together sort of makes a whirlpool. And that's the bottom. So there's 2, 0, 3, 1, and 4 points of this geometry. Spirals down, flows together and flows out, and like I said, it becomes metafractalic, which means a fractal is self-iterating, like repeating, and meta means that it does it arbitrarily up to an unspecified exponential degree. Mathematics absolutely breaks. It's like taking the square of infinity and the square of 0 and putting them by the power of themselves, so multiplying infinity by infinity and 0 by 0. That falls into the algebra, but I'm going to have to make a second video for this. This might be... There is then a triality, which the thing that would be, I just place it above, because it's the grander. It's the sum total of dualism and non-dualism ascending together. It also then again folds in on itself. So all 3 of those things are the one thing. It drops down and it collapses into one reality. Once it collapses, it then contains every possible configuration of every single duality in trans non-duality. It's a complete unity. And with that unity, some pretty interesting things can happen. It somewhat escapes my immediate, accessible, tangible, easily spoken grasp and comprehension. I'm going to review my notes and do my best to explain it to you right now. You could say that the upper portion of this, where it's immediately apprehensively formed, moment by moment, even though we're split between moments, but that's irrelevant at the moment. Okay. At the bottom, though, it is more like the ethereal non-physical possibilities, which are realized in reality. They're still composed of that. So when a unified singularity collapses in on itself, it becomes, I don't know, the supersendence collapses into a unified singularity. From there, the unified singularity is a multi-layered, manifold grid. So it's reflective of the initial point. But within it, it contains all possibilities. So it's more like roots of a tree coming down from the grand unified reality, splitting into the multiplex. Plex is sort of a formation of sorts as well, I guess. And it's a manifold, which is like a substrate, a background, a paradigm, you know. And it's a grid, and those all kind of mean the same thing, more or less. But what they can do is self-fulfill with each other from the complexity derived from all around. A fractal is an ever-increasingly self-dependent sequence of patterns that follow in increasing complexity in relation to itself by exploring every possibility and avenue of every set of its potentials, or actualizing itself more and more. Metafractal would be like standing in a spherical mirror. You move forward, you're big, you get small, you get big again, I believe. I have to review that. But it's something where you basically return to the same point. There's a point in the middle, and it loops around. Very spherical like. Very much like a wave or a sphere particle. Particles may not truly be spheres. It's more of just a metric to kind of connect. So, this is so hard to get through. Light does not experience time. The closest thing that we can get to what time is what photons operate within and dictate, basically. This means if you're in a spherical mirror, everything you're seeing is based on light, right? There isn't much of a better terminology or metric for time passing than light. So if you're moving and you're returning to the same space, is it not possible that time loops in a spherical metafractalic fashion? Metafractalic is infinitely reflecting. If you think from first principles and logical induction, which are both the highest and lowest forms of logic, like at the base of things, and it generalizes and spreads down across it all as well. Our working memory is kind of coded to hold 4 or 5 things in mind. Now, that could just be an arbitrary evolutionary trait, or it could say something about the nature of reality. Supra, dual, non-dualistic sentence. Yeah, well, at this point, it just multiplies without end. And you can harness that. You can go down a rabbit hole of sorts and spiral upwards. Oddly enough, logic is present everywhere. There's a grammar to it, and a truth underlying your current. Go with the flow, as that's the defined course. You could hop off, but then wouldn't that just be another part of your course? Where does the land end and the water begin? Regardless, you have to step carefully and steer your raft with great diligence. You want to take the right path. It's a little bit like the Tao, the Taoist view, Taoist, whatever the correct terminology is. I'm familiar, but I'm studied on it. What I do know is that actually anything is possible. Like, actually anything. There will be resource investments and commitments and sacrifices. But you get to choose. You get to dictate which part of the fractal you spiral down into.